Reporting from Jerusalem for EndTimes.com, this is Brian Schrauger. It has been less than a week since Israel entered into a ceasefire with Lebanon. Today's news cycle, that's a long time ago. Since then, and for the most part, Western media has turned its attention away from Israel-related news. Here in the Jewish state, however, and in its dangerous Middle East neighborhood, a lot is happening. Tensions remain high. On Sunday morning, for example, I woke up to dozens of alerts in central Israel. My first thought, so much for the ceasefire. A few minutes later, however, the IDF announced it had intercepted a ballistic missile from the Houthis in Yemen. In fact, it was an Iranian-made hypersonic missile that the Houthis called Palestine II. Reaching Israel within 11.5 minutes from the time of its launch, 1,900 miles away, alarms sounded throughout central Israel for two reasons. Uncertainty about where exactly it might hit, and because its 550-kilogram warhead could cause widespread damage and death. Thankfully, Israel was able to intercept the missile, allowing life in Israel to go back to normal. Believing at first that the attack was coming from Hezbollah in Lebanon, there was good reason for concern that the alarms were an indication that the ceasefire had failed. Jerusalem itself is so dubious about the ability of the ceasefire to hold, it has not allowed more than 60,000 refugees from northern Israel communities to return to their homes near the border with Lebanon. Indeed, since its implementation on 27 November, Hezbollah has several times violated the ceasefire by sending operatives south of the Litani River to known locations for firing rockets into Israel. As per the ceasefire agreement allowing Jerusalem, quote, complete military freedom of action, end quote, when operatives in Lebanon violate the agreement, Israel has targeted the terrorists and eliminated them. Of course, when it did so, Lebanon and even France accused Israel of violating the agreement. Regardless, and thankfully, however, the ceasefire has held. Why did Israel agree to temporarily halt its military operation in Lebanon? In an address to the nation on 26 November, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu gave three reasons. 1, to focus on the Iranian threat. 2, to give our forces a breather and to replenish stocks. 3, to separate the Hezbollah front in the north from the Hamas front in the south, and thereby isolate Hamas from Hezbollah's support. There is hope here that this separation of support for Hamas will lead to the release of 101 hostages still held in Gaza, of which at least half are thought to still be alive. It is impossible to convey the depth of Israeli anguish over those hostages still held in captivity. That anguish was amplified just last Saturday when Hamas released a video of hostage Eidan Alexander, who is both Israeli and American.
ואני אסיר בשבי החמאס יותר מ-420. זה ראש הממשלה, בנימין נתניהו. אני שמעתי אותך לדבר עם עם ישראל בחדשות, ואני מאוכזב מאוד. אני שמעתי שאתה מוכן להעניק למי שמסגיר אותנו $5 מיליון אם הוא הביא אותנו חי לעם ישראל. ראש ממשלה אמור להגן על האזרחים ועל החיילים שלו, ואתה הפקרת אותם. השומרים שלנו הודיעו לנו על ההנחיות החדשות שהם קיבלו ברגע שכוחות צה"ל התקרבו למקומנו. הפחד שלנו עכשיו בשיאו, ואנחנו נמתין 1,000 פעם בכל יום שעובר, ואף אחד לא מרגיש אותנו. עם ישראל, אל תפקירו אותם. אנחנו רוצים לחזור עם שכל שלם הביתה.
Not surprisingly, at least here, a poll released last Friday revealed that no less than 71% of Israelis support a hostage deal that would end the war in Gaza. One of the biggest concerns? 93% believe the hostages are in danger of sexual violence. What is the worry about a potential agreement with Hamas in Gaza and the one recently implemented with Hezbollah in Lebanon? Namely this: both leave room for the terrorist organizations to regroup, recover, and in time attack Israel again. After all, Hezbollah, Hamas, and their sponsor Iran are all openly committed to nothing less than the annihilation of Israel. In balance, however, Jerusalem seems to have decided that Iran's nuclear program is the far greater and more immediate threat to the Jewish state. Prime Minister Netanyahu articulated this concern in his address to the nation on 26 November. "I am determined," he said, "to do anything needed to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. That threat has always been my top priority, and is even more so today when you hear Iran's leaders state over and over again their intention to obtain nuclear weapons. For me, removing that threat is the most important mission to ensure the existence and future of the State of Israel." Meanwhile, an entirely new and surprising uprising in Syria has captured a lot of attention. Does it benefit Israel? Does it pose a risk? Last Wednesday, 27 November, the same day the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire began, a rebel group in northwest Syria blitzed its second-largest city, Aleppo. With a population of more than 2 million people, it has been a cultural, military, and business cornerstone for Bashar Assad's regime based 200 miles south in Damascus. To everyone's great surprise, including the rebels, Aleppo fell into their hands with almost no resistance. Its property, airport, businesses, and military sites, including tanks, jets, missiles, and more, became rebel assets overnight. Syria, as you might recall, really is not a country. Instead, it consists of regions in which various groups have held control since at least 2011, when civil war broke out in the country. Today, the area in dark red is Assad's regime. In light red, the Assad loyalist countryside. The dark blue area on the bottom left of the map and on the border with Israel is controlled by Israel, albeit unofficially. The dark green area in the northeast is HTS territory. More about them in just a minute. The lighter green areas are under the control of various Kurdish factions. In Assad's region, there are the SAF, the NDF, Shabiha militias, Hezbollah operatives, Russian troops, and Iran's IRGC special forces. In opposition to Assad's region, there are the NC, the SIG, SSG, FSA, a few ISIS and Al-Qaeda remnants, the SNA, NCB, SCSR, the SDC, and the HTS. What we call Syria is, in fact, an alphabet soup of factions that are almost impossible for those outside the region to remember, let alone understand their various allegiance and roles. And there's more. Various ethnic and religious groups in what is called Syria include Sunni and Shia Muslims, Kurds, Turkmen, Assyrians, and Druze. Nothing about the so-called country of Syria is simple. The part of that alphabet soup that has taken over a huge swath of northern Syria is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the HTS. Led by a former and supposedly reformed member of al-Qaeda, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, HTS is a Sunni Muslim organization. Let's try to simplify. The HTS rebels that have taken over huge portions of Syria in just 6 days are sponsored by Turkey. It's no accident that, in all likelihood, Turkey's President Recep Erdogan pulled the trigger to launch the HTS blitz on the same day that Hezbollah was neutralized by the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire. Since 2015, Syrian President Assad has depended on a number of outside forces to defend his regime. They included Hezbollah and Russia, both of which are crippled and distracted, Hezbollah by its war with Israel and Russia by its war with Ukraine. Sensing the opportunity, HTS blitzed and met almost no opposition. In fact, it is still advancing, threatening Assad's regime to the south and the Kurds to the north. What does this mean for Israel? On the one hand, there is celebration of Assad's distraction and possible downfall. On the other hand, there is cautious concern. Instead of Hezbollah in Lebanon, might we be seeing the establishment of a new Iranian proxy in Syria? Or a Turkish proxy under an increasingly anti-Israel government in Ankara? It is possible. Of this we can be sure. Jerusalem is keeping a very close eye on developments over its other northern border with Syria. It's also keeping a close eye on developments inside its borders in the Palestinian territories located in Judea and Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank. Although virtually ignored by media reports since 7 October 2023, Israel has been fighting Iranian-sponsored terror cells inside Judea and Samaria. To date, it is, in fact, something of a miracle that those terror cells have not succeeded in starting a third intifada, a war with radicalized Palestinians within its borders. And then, of course, there is Sunday's reminder of the threat posed by the Houthis in Yemen. They have ballistic missiles and are able to fire them directly into the heart of Israel. As for Iran, well, its supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is calling for, quote, a death sentence for Netanyahu and the Zionist criminal leaders, end quote. At the same time, he has declared Hamas's 7 October attack, the so-called Al-Aqsa flood operation, a victory over the Zionist project, which he says is breathing its final breaths. One video Khamenei recently posted is of interest, especially to disciples of Yeshua who are keenly aware of spiritual warfare. The video is titled, "To Allah Belong the Armies of Heaven and Earth." As you listen to this excerpt, think of it from the perspective of propaganda authored by no one less than the all-too-real enemy of our souls.
در درجه اول بسیج یک مکتب است، یک اندیشه است، یک تفکره. بسیج بر روی خدا باوری و خود باوری بنا شده. البته خدا باوری که عرض میکنیم چه در ابعاد فرد بسیجی چه در ابعاد سازمان بسیج. وقتی که خدا باوری به وجود آمد، وجود داشت، این حقیقت در مقابل چشم انسان که وعده الهی است تجلی پیدا میکنه ولله جنود السماوات والارض.
ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عزيزا حكيما.
عزیز یعنی موجودی که غلبه میکند و هرگز مغلوب نمیشود. همه این اجزای بی‌نهایت عالم وجود لشکر خدا. اگر ما بنده خدا باشیم این لشکر میتوانه به کمک ما بیاد. این سنت‌های الهی، سنت‌های طبیعی. البته فرماندهی این لشکر با ما نیست که هر وقت اراده کردیم از این لشکر الهی استفاده کنیم. فرمانده خداست. منتها این فرمانده در شرایط خاص و با شرایط معین وقتی که ما آماده باشیم این رو در اختیار ما میذاریم. تعبیرات صریح قرآن کریم. بلا ان تصبروا و تتقوا
و یأتوکم من فورهم هذا یمددکم ربکم بخمسة آلاف من الملائكة مسومین.
اگر شما آماده باشید ملائکه الهی هم به کمک شما. ما این کمک ها رو دیدیم، هم در دفاع مقدس دیدیم، هم قبلش دیدیم، هم بعدش دیدیم. هم در میدان سیاسی دیدیم، هم در میدان جنگ نظامی دیدیم، هم در میدان علمی دیدیم کمک های الهی. کمک الهی رو کجا میشه دید؟ اونجایی که کاری شما انجام میدید که به خیال خودتون، به نظر خودتون ناممکنه اما ممکن میشه، تحقق پیدا میکنه.
The takeaway: Israel's enemy has not given up. Neither has ours. He's a counterfeit, brilliantly portraying himself as the one true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose name is not Allah. Our spiritual battle is far from over. In fact, it's going to get much, much worse. In this time of temporary ceasefire, what must we do? Well, with optimistic chutzpah, we daily put on the full armor of God, fighting to advance and praying without ceasing. If you are not yet a subscriber to endtimes.com, I urge you to subscribe right now at the website for only $7 a month. You will receive a wealth of information and insight from Jimmy Evans, Mark Hitchcock, and experts from around the world, including Israelis living right here in the Jewish state. Do yourself a favor and sign up today. Reporting from Israel for endtimes.com, and until next week, this is Brian Schrauger.